Well, with so much potentials in Nigeria, on the African continent, sometimes it could be frustrating on why these have remained potentials and not yet reality and enjoyed benefits by the people. On the continent, a lot of fingers are pointing to structural inefficiencies. How can this be dealt with? That's what we're going to be discussing now with the Executive Director of Ernest Shonekan Center, Mr. Uchenna Ogbonna, still from Abuja Studio. Abuja Studio, very busy this morning. Mr. Ogbonna, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you for having me on this program.
Great. So how much of a challenge is this structural inefficiencies in Nigeria? A lot of people say this is why our potentials have remained potentials and have not been unlocked.
Okay. You just mentioned it. Nigeria has quite enormous potential, varying from the arable land for agriculture, the abundant natural resources, the teeming population. Yet we are not achieving our full potentials because of certain infrastructural deficiencies. And if I put it, I'll call it structural deficiencies and all. First of all, we talk about infrastructural decays that have impeded ease of doing business in Nigeria. It's particularly the area of energy and transportation. For power sector, it's a major challenge. Many companies, a recent study shows that Nigerian businesses spend up to 40% of their operational costs providing alternative power supply, and that is a major challenge that increases costs of doing business in Nigeria. A World Bank report also indicates that Nigeria loses approximately $29 billion due to unstable power supply in the country, and this is a major challenge to business environment in Nigeria. How do we improve this? We need to focus on alternative power supply. Presently, the country generates approximately 3,500 to 5,000 megawatts of power, and this has been in that range for so many years. We are not seeing much improvement. So there should be more investment in alternative power supply. Then in the area of transportation, the delays in clearing of goods at the ports, the inaccessible routes, which is preventing farmers from bringing their products out to the consumers in the cities, has become a major challenge to businesses in Nigeria. So these are areas we need to look at. There's also the issue of legislative and regulatory inconsistencies. So many conflicting regulations and conflicting levies and taxes across the federal and state and local government levels. These are also impediments to the ease of doing business in Nigeria. And to drive this, they need to harmonize all these taxes and levies. I know that the tax reform bill, which is still in progress, is addressing some of the issues, but we need to also address the issue of overlapping regulatory requirements. Then we also talk about obtaining permits in the country has been a major problem, and I attribute that to red tapeism and bureaucratic nature of the government structure. For foreign investors, it becomes very difficult obtaining certain permits to be able to operate in Nigeria, and that's also an impediment to achieving our full potential despite our natural and resources and the teeming population we have.
So just as you mentioned,
I will also say that.
So just as you mentioned, the issue of reforms, we know, well, the President Bola Tinubu has been on a reform road since he got into office. Would you say that we're on the right track at this time? If not, what else do you think should be introduced or added to the reforms to help us efficiently and deal with the problem and to accelerate the pace also?
Actually, I would say we are presently on the right track with the recent reforms that are coming into effect. But the challenge we are going to have is implementation. And this implementation of this is based on the regulatory environment. The intention that is the reason why there should be some stakeholder engagement in this process of reforms, so that everybody gets to understand the clear objectives of the reforms. Because if it's not properly understood, the actors in the field might end up not implementing the right vision of the lawmakers. So I think the country is in the right direction, but we need to deal more with implementation.
Okay, but how can the Ernest Shonekan Center help in this? I mean, that's what you're there for.
Yes, man. So Ernest Connection Center, let me say, started as a business environment roundtable, championing legislative reforms that will improve the ease of doing business in Nigeria. And presently, we have moved beyond the legislature. We're also advocating for regulations that will improve the ease of doing business in Nigeria. And we are doing this with a three-pronged approach. First of all, there's a research foundation which we rely on to identify the gaps that need to be addressed. And then we implement this by capacity building, technical assistance, stakeholder engagement, and advocacy. And that is what the center has been using to achieve reforms and in certain sectors of the economy.
So if you were to recommend 3 areas for reform, urgent reform, what areas would that be?
Okay, in the first place, there's one major area we have not really looked into in this country. Our development planning has been short-term over the years. The current development plan we have is running from is about a 5-year development plan, and the previous one was a 3-year development plan. And these development plans do not exceed the existing administration. There is need for long-term development plans that will run beyond successive governments. And this long-term development plan must have a legislative framework that will make it imperative for subsequent administrations to follow the development plan. So that will help have a long-term structure that will achieve our potentials. Secondly, we also need to review some of our investment laws. We need to look at reforms in the investment sector so that we can attract foreign direct investment. Yes, the president has signed a new Investment and Securities Act, but I still feel we need to do more in terms of incentives to attract foreign investors. For a country that is highly dependent on oil, and with the price of crude dropping by the day and high exchange rate, we need to do as much as possible to attract foreign direct investments.
All right, thank you so much.
We also need to deal with the infrastructure laws that will unlock investments in the infrastructure industry, because a lot of the infrastructures are restricted to government investments, and government cannot do it alone. For instance, the rail lines, we need to unlock the laws that are restricting investments in these lines so that there can be a more open and competitive economy for the Nigerians to invest in.
All right, Mr. Uchenna Obona, thank you so much, Executive Director of Ernest Shonekan Center. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.